The Bible says the meek will inherit the earth. In all of nature, there is none more meek than the manatee. But unfortunately, the manatee may not survive to be among the meek the good book meant. For millions of years, they flourished in Florida's coastal waters, asking for nothing more than the freedom to forage for food and to raise a brood. At 13 feet in length and weighing up to 3,500 pounds, the manatee knew no natural enemy. But while its size discouraged predators, it offered no defense against propellers. Man and the speeding motorboat are the manatee's enemies, accounting for 30% of the annual fatalities. And as the number of boaters increases and their speed increases, the carnage and its cause increases.
Nowadays, in this modern day and time, with these boats moving so fast, with a 300 horsepower engine behind a 17-foot bass boat, that's a projectile moving through the water at 80 miles an hour. We found that the animal doesn't have to be cut up. They can be hit so hard with the prow of that boat that it ruptures those big old massive ribs, punctures their lungs, and they die.
Dr. Jesse White is affectionately known as the father of the Florida manatee and has successfully bred them in captivity. Two of his offspring, Sunrise and Savannah, were acclimated to the wild here at Homosassa Springs Nature World and later released to the open water. It was hoped that captive breeding might be a means of replenishing the wild population, but at this point, the potential of such a program is in doubt. Radio tracking devices have been affixed to both animals. While they weren't intended to remain on indefinitely, they seem to have been lost prematurely.
You guys are worried about Sunrise, aren't you? Well, this is Sunrise's harness. It was dredged up by a shrimp boat in the Gulf, far from typical manatee habitat. There's severe slash marks on it. The experts at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service say they may have been caused by a large predator, but the spacing of these slash marks are similar to the propeller scars that adorn the backs of so many Florida manatees.
Whether Sunrise and Savannah have survived or not, captive breeding is currently not considered a viable solution to preventing the manatee's extinction. As various groups and agencies seek solutions, Nature World's J.P. Garner suggests that we try a rather simple one, that we simply try harder not to kill them.
Let's face it, what are we discussing? The future of these manatee and the wild herd. So we need to all pull together. This is what it's all about. Forget everything else, but how to save this species from extinction.
The manatee, Florida's gentle giant of the sea. Ours is not the first generation to appreciate and wish to preserve them. The state was established as a manatee sanctuary in the 18th century, while still under British rule. At the beginning of this century, a $500 fine was enacted as a penalty for anyone who killed or molested a manatee. And almost a decade ago, the Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act became law, reestablishing the state as a manatee sanctuary. In one form or another, then, the manatee has been protected for over 300 years. And yet today, in the words of the artist Tite, despite the protection, there's impending extinction.
Budgets do not really allow for any type of serious scientific study, nor does the government has any kind of provisions to accept with any amount of credibility the findings. The best scientific research studies, after they're presented, they are cataloged as an educated opinion. And we cannot preserve a species with an educated opinion.
Rick Beccaro is an enlistee in the fight to save the manatee. His sculpture in the Caloosahatchee does far more than adorn the river. It instills in those who navigate it an empathy for the manatee. Unlike the regulatory signs, which journalist Brent Sheneman believes sometimes send the wrong message.
Well, today, for example, on this Sunday, we have law enforcement officers out here on the river stopping people for taking their boats through here too fast. Now, we see our main herd right now, it's downriver about 1 mile. Now, at that point, the boats are going 30, 40, 50 knots, and they're going right over the manatee herds unrestricted. It seems like everyone now knows to go to idle speeds here, but the manatees have forgot to read the signs that this is where they belong.
In addition to individuals, industry is involved in the fight to save the manatees, especially the power companies. For them, the cause is inescapable, for it is inevitable that in wintertime, these warm-blooded mammals will seek out the warmth of the hot water discharge of the power plants.
You guys like those manatees? Yeah! This is the refuge and viewing facility that TECO erected at its Big Bend plant in Apollo Beach. But it's Florida Power and Light in South Florida that blazed the trail.
We have a whole environmental department that not only deals with manatees.
Marianne Heath is with the Public Relations Department of Florida Power and Light, but their effort goes much farther than public relations. They've gone so far as to drill wells, so should one of their plants go down, the manatees will still have a source of warm water.
If water gets below 70 degrees, then it's life-threatening for the manatee. They're warm-blooded mammals, and they need the warm water.
At TECO's Manatee facility this past weekend, some members of the next generation of Floridians were learning about the manatees' needs. They also received a lesson in what the manatees don't need from some members of the current generation. The other side of that sign says Manatee Sanctuary. No motorboats beyond this point. They named him Frederick. No particular reason. It's just that manatees have such a human quality about them that once they come into our care, they seem to have a name. A few weeks ago, though, Frederick had no name. He was a free manatee until a park ranger saw him and saw the huge gaping wounds in his back. He was rushed to the aquatic clinic at SeaWorld, but too much time had passed. Because a boater didn't stop, the infection had a head start. And last week, after 15 days, the doctors at SeaWorld lost their fight to save Frederick's life.
The one thing we like to stress is, accidents do happen. We like to cut down on all the accidents, obviously, but if you were happen to hit a manatee accidentally, please call someone. I mean, the faster that we can get medical help and treatment of these animals, the better chance we're going to have of saving them.
Boaters aren't known for ignoring others in need. In fact, they're famous for coming to the aid of fellow seafarers. Well, manatees are mariners also, and it's the law of the sea in this state that they have the right of way over all others, power and sail. Remember, centerboards and keels can clobber manatees too.
Regrettably, there are those who care nothing for the manatees and little for laws. As our state grows, their number also grows. Not only those who would destroy them with their boats, but the developers who would destroy their habitats. It's uncontrolled growth that is the greatest concern to the state's manatee coordinator, Pat Rose, who believes the fate we create for the manatee is also our own destiny.
We could continue to develop our coastal areas so that you always had an opportunity to go out in your boat and race around, but you may not have an opportunity to catch fish because the water's so polluted that the nursery grounds are decimated, and therefore to protect manatees, we're literally protecting those estuarine habitats as well and providing for the fishing opportunities. To protect manatees, we're also going to be saving human lives. Those fatalities are on the rise as well. I think the main point I guess I'd like to make now is that we can protect the resources, the fishery grounds, the manatees, and human lives all with similar activities by planning our growth in such a way that we can accommodate the growth and still have this quality experience left in Florida.
Florida, the home of the manatees. We have given them sanctuaries, but we must each take a greater responsibility. Otherwise, the manatee may someday be a memory.